Howdy and welcome to Someone Should Know. I'm your host, Lydia Shock. Welcome back, y'all, to another episode of Someone Should Know. Howdy, come on in. Today, we are talking about a topic that I'm quite passionate about. This is something that I really think is important in establishing a strong sense of self, having, kind of the foundation to start building more mental strength off of or onto, rather. I really enjoy this topic quite a bit, so let's get into it. Have you ever done something awesome and then waited for somebody to notice? Yeah, you have. You know you have. Come on, we can be honest here together. Okay. We all have. We have all been there where we have done something either in hopes that somebody noticed, or we did it, whatever that thing was, we did it intentionally for somebody to notice, right? So someone should know that seeking internal validation is hot. Having an unshakable sense of internal self-worth is sexy. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we do that. What are the steps that we need to take to fill our own cup, validate our own sense of self, and not seek attention or validation from other people to make us feel good about ourselves. I follow a creator. I've followed her for many years now. I don't know. I think I maybe started following her in like 2017, 2018. Her name is Shallon Lester. She goes by Shallon XO on YouTube. She had a podcast for a while called Girl on Top. I think she has since discontinued that. I could be wrong, but I believe she's working on another podcast at this current time. But anyways, yes, her name is Shallon Lester. She's great. She's also a person kind of in the self-improvement space. She does a lot of like celebrity comparisons. She used to be a journalist, so she has that firsthand account of, being with the stars and whatnot. And so she does kind of comparisons from what celebrities are going through and how we can apply that to our own lives and what we can learn and take away. It's really great. You guys should check her out. Shallon Lester, Shallon XO on YouTube. And I heard her use this phrase, to which I'm about to tell you here in a moment. I heard her use this phrase years ago, and it was the first time I had heard internal validation or internal self-worth be explained through this analogy, and it made so much sense to me after I've heard it. And since then, I have shared it with anybody who will listen. So today, that is you. But I taught this in a class. I taught a mental strength class a few years ago, and I taught this in that class as well. And yeah, I think it's such a great analogy to build off of. When we think about warm-blooded and cold-blooded, I want you to think about that in the literal sense of the word, right? In terms of warm-blooded animals or cold-blooded animals. Now, a cold-blooded animal, like a snake or a lizard or whatever, you cannot take a desert snake out of the Sahara and put it in Malibu and expect it to survive. Because cold-blooded animals depend on their environment to survive. Malibu is far too wet and humid for a desert snake. They need that dry heat. Versus a warm-blooded animal, such as a bear or a tiger, you can take a bear out of Yellowstone Park and put it, I don't know, in a different park south. What would that be? I don't know. I don't know my parks very well, apparently. This is turning out to be a bad analogy. You could take a bear from the northern part of the country. We're just going to pivot stupid. We're going to pivot the analogy altogether. You could take a bear from Montana and put it in New Mexico, and it's not going to die. It might be a little warm, sure, but it's not going to inherently just die because it's in New Mexico now. Why? Because warm-blooded animals regulate their own temperature. They can live north, south, east, west, wherever without the fear of dying or combusting into flames because they are a, water turtle that you put in the desert. So how does this relate to us? Cold-blooded animals depend on their environment to survive. Cold-blooded people do the same. They depend on their environment to survive. They depend on the likes from their Instagram post. They depend on attention from men. They depend on being the quote unquote popular person. They depend on getting attention from their parents, whatever. You get kind of my point, I'm hoping. That is a cold-blooded person, constantly looking to the outside, asking the outside if I am good enough. Asking my parents if I'm good enough, asking boys if I'm good enough, asking Instagram or the internet if I'm good enough. That is what it means to be cold-blooded. If all of that attention and validation was taken away from you tomorrow, who are you? Versus a warm-blooded animal gives itself that validation, regulates its own internal rhythm. Post something on Instagram because it looks fire, and if you don't think so, you're stupid. Marches to the beat of their own drum because it aligns with them and who they are and their life. And if it upsets you or makes you feel some type of way, I don't know, that's tough shit. That is what it means to be warm-blooded. Living for you, validating you, feeling worthy of you, and not asking somebody else if you are worthy, but knowing inherently that you are. I want you to think about it. I want you to ask yourself how often you let other people dictate how you feel about yourself. How often? And who are those people too? Take inventory of that. Is it the internet, your parents, your boyfriend, your friends, your teachers, your boss? Who is that person that you are constantly looking to feel good about yourself? Do you notice how fleeting it is? Was that something that you thought of when I asked you to think on how often you're asking somebody to validate you? Have you noticed how fleeting that feeling is? Because the second they take it away, they take your self-worth with it. One compliment feels amazing. You feel on top of the world. And then the next day they don't like you and you're like, why? What have I done? That's cold-blooded. That is cold-blooded. There is a quote from Octavia Spencer. It's wonderful. She talks about, somebody of her stature and, of her fame and notoriety. Somebody had asked her, I don't know, something about reading hate comments or whatever. And she said that she doesn't take any of the comments to heart, whether good or bad. Whether it's a compliment or an insult, she really just takes both of them on the chin, doesn't really think anything of either, and keeps it moving. That is being warm-blooded. Because if you believe all of the good comments, you kind of inherently have to believe the bad ones too, right? If everybody's commenting correctly, then you have to assume that the bad ones are correct as well. Versus if you just don't give a shit, I don't care what anybody says, good, bad, ugly, in between, whatever. I look fire in this Instagram post, so choke. That is what it means to be warm-blooded. Being warm-blooded is That's cool if you like me. I'm fine if you don't. All that to say now, how can we learn to grow in that skill of internal validation? How can we do that? Let's talk about it. First of all, let's talk about what is internal validation. Let's define it clearly so there's no gray area. I know we talk about this analogy between warm-blooded and cold-blooded, which I think is phenomenal. But let's talk about like kind of definitively what it is. And I didn't actually look up the definition. Let's look it up real quick. Okay, so I've asked ChatGPT here, my best friend, to define internal validation. But before I read it to you, I want to list off a couple things that I noted here in my notes. Validation from yourself is choosing yourself, honoring your values, trusting your judgment. Those are a few of the things that I said that I used to define internal validation. Here's what ChatGPT has to say. Internal validation is the process of recognizing, affirming, and valuing your own feelings, thoughts, and experiences without needing outside approval. It's when you give yourself permission to feel what you feel, believe in your own worth, and acknowledge your efforts and achievements rather than rely solely on others to reassure you. Damn, ChatGPT is incredible. I freaking love ChatGPT. And here it even gave me it even gave me the external validation. It even gave me the definition for external validation down here. This contrasts with external validation, which comes from other people's recognition, praise, and approval. So it's exactly what I said. Choosing yourself, honoring your values, trusting your judgment, honoring your life experiences without feeling the need to get any kind of approval or reassurance from somebody else. So this all sounds really great in theory, right? Internal validation, internal sense of self, feeling myself, feeling the worth, feeling all the things. But how do you do that? How do you start executing that? Well, I'm going to go over it. I've got a few examples here just to start getting your mind churning on, things and decisions that you can start making today to start building in that, internal validation muscle. And it is a muscle. And we've talked about this in previous videos that if you want to build on a skill, an internal skill or an external skill, it takes practice and you're not going to get it right every time, but that's okay. You just do it again and you do it again. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But, first I do want to point you in the direction of another resource. So of course, Miss Shallon Lester, who kind of coined, I don't know if she did coin it or if she heard it from somewhere, but she's where I heard it from. So she coined it for all I know. So Miss Shallon Lester is a great resource for y'all, but I also want to point you in the direction of this video from Lady Gaga, and I'll leave it in the comments. I'm going to leave the whole video in the show notes so you can go check out the whole video, but there is a specific part of this panel that she did where she basically talks about how she started to build in that sense of self and build in that internal worth. And it started with her saying no. No, I don't want to go to that event. No, I don't want to work on that project. No, I'm not going to stand next to that because that's not what I stand for. And she says, slowly but surely, I started to discover who I was. And then she looks in the mirror every night and she goes, yes, this is a person that I understand. Isn't that beautiful? You'll have to go watch it because the way she says it is just, she's Lady Gaga. She's incredible. But these decisions that you make day in and day out that align with who you are, your core centric values. No, I don't want to do that. No, you're not the kind of person I want to be around. You make decisions every day that slowly add up to the building blocks of your life. And you're either making choices that aid in the life that you're trying to build, and you can look back on those choices and feel pride and gratitude, or you can look back on those choices and feel stupid and like you wasted time. And that's what she's saying is Slowly but surely, she started to discover who she was by honoring who she was. And then you go to bed with yourself every night just so sure of who you are. And doesn't matter what anybody has to say about it, because fuck you. That's why, because I know who I am. Because I've discovered her little by little along the way. And so here are some examples of how you can start building in your self-worth, your internal sense of self, your internal validation. Here are some examples. Number 1, making decisions that you're proud of. That includes keeping promises to yourself. Oof. Yeah, I said it. I called your ass out. I'm sorry. I had to do it to you. But it's true. It's true. Keeping promises to yourself. Doesn't it make you proud when you say that you're going to work out after work and then you actually do work out and then you're like, oh my God, I did that shit. Right? And it makes you feel great. It like fills your cup. Plus, endorphins make you happy, and happy people just don't kill their husbands. Number 2, spending time alone. Spending time alone. If you cannot spend time alone without your skin itching, I think that says something about how you feel about yourself. I do. I think it says something about how secure you feel in your skin. You can't go to lunch by yourself. You can't go to a movie by yourself. You can't go shopping by yourself. I think it says something about how you feel in your own skin. And also, this is just a sidebar, but it bodes saying nobody cares if you go do stuff by yourself. Nobody cares. Nobody is thinking about you like you're thinking about you. Nobody gives a shit that you're having lunch by yourself. Nobody cares. Nobody cares that you went to a movie by yourself. If anything, when I see people doing things by themselves, I'm like, rock on. Look at you. That is someone who is comfortable with themselves. So spending time alone, getting to know yourself. What do you like to do by yourself? When's the last time you even spent time alone? Like intentional one-on-one time alone with yourself, not like you happen to be alone because everybody else is busy, but like you deliberately and intentionally chose to be by yourself. When is the last time you've done that? To go do something with yourself. I like to call it self-dates. Let me know if you guys want more on self-dates, because that's another topic that I could go on for 2 hours about, because I think it's so important to date yourself. But when's the last time you did that? All right, number 3, saying no to things and people that don't align with you. Lady Gaga talks about this in her little panel. But saying no. Having boundaries. Having boundaries doesn't make you a bitch. It don't. It don't. I know there are people out here that would like you to think that it makes you a bitch, but it don't. It don't. Saying no protects you. Saying no protects your peace. It protects your relationships. It protects your mental. And number 4, educating and empowering yourself. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. Why is it that we see people in positions of power, leadership, highly intelligent, whatever? Why is it that when we see people like that, oftentimes they're super charismatic, outgoing, they've got a lot of charm, they've got a lot of confidence? It's because they feel good about themselves. They have that internal sense of self-worth. Because knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, and it makes them feel powerful. And I'm not saying you have to be like a doctor or a lawyer to feel educated. I'm just saying that, if you're feeling, like, oh, I'm stupid and nobody likes me and I'm this and I'm that, whatever, you know what I'm talking about, If you're playing that game, my question to you would be, what are you doing to educate yourself? What are you doing to further yourself, to empower yourself, to pour into yourself? Are you going to seminars? Are you taking classes? Are you reading books? What is it that you want to improve on? What would make your life better? Knowing more about financial literacy, knowing more about how to get out of debt, knowing more about growing a business, knowing more about raising children. What is it that you would like to know more about? And are you pouring into those things that are going to give you back a reward of education that nobody will take away from you? These are all things that once applied make you feel good about yourself. Fill your cup. There's another one too that I'm going to mention that Shallon mentions a lot that I think is worth a little number 5 mention: volunteering. When's the last time you thought about somebody other than yourself? When's the last time you did something for somebody other than yourself? Volunteering is a really humbling experience because you realize, oh, actually, my life is not as bad as I like to think that it is. I'm actually incredibly blessed. So number 5 would be volunteering. Really gives you perspective. It really does. I recommend it. I want you to think of a moment recently where you practiced internal validation. What is a moment recently that you were proud of? Whether a way that you handled something or whatever. And did anybody notice, or were you just proud that you did that? And again, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it takes practice. And when I was mentally weak and didn't have a strong sense of self, I absolutely sought outside validation to feel good about myself, specifically from boys. That's what I mostly remember from that time. And even like after high school, like when I was still working on it and still building it. And even to this day, I'm still building it. But that's really what I remember from that time, was seeking attention from boys. I wanted to be liked by boys so badly. And since then I've learned, boys are stupid. No, you guys aren't, but, kind of. But, now again, it goes back to, it's cool if you like me. I'm fine if you don't. I'm fine if you don't. And honestly, that's kind of how I started to approach dating once I did start to have this internal sense of self, and I did start knowing my worth, and I did start to realize that, some of these boys are stupid. You are dumb because I'm the full fucking package, brother. And I think that it boded really well for me in dating. I think my husband, Sean, thought that that was a really sexy quality that I was like, listen, man, like I want you around. I want to be with you. I'm good though either way. I'm taken care of. I've got myself. And he thought that that was a sexy quality, that I didn't need a man. I wanted him. So now let's talk about why this matters. Why it matters to have that internal sense of self, if it's not glaringly obvious. I want you to think about how different your life would be if you only needed your own approval. I want you to think about how different the decisions you make would be if you didn't have to call your mom and your sister and your friend and your husband and your grandma and your second aunt and your 3 cousins before you made that decision. Why it matters to be warm-blooded is because the payoff means confidence. The payoff means resilience. It means being less emotionally dependent on others. It's the ability to have respect for yourself, flaws and all. It's knowing that I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Do I think I'm perfect or ever claim to be perfect? But I work really hard every day to be a good person. I work really hard every day to be a better version of myself today than I was yesterday, and rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat. And that's enough. This week, I want you to find one thing. Identify one thing that will be one small step forward towards that internal validation. What's one thing you can do for yourself this week? Can you cancel something you didn't really want to commit to? Can you go on a self-date with yourself? Maybe the first time ever? Can you post that picture that you really like on Instagram, but you thought you looked a little fat in? Can you post that? I don't know. I don't know what it would be, but think on it. And everybody that's listening, that's the one thing I want you to do between this week and next. One thing that you can practice validating yourself. Building that muscle of internal rhythm, that internal sense of self. That internal, unshakable self-worth that nobody can take away from you. But you've got to build it. You've got to practice. You've got to put in the reps. You got to build the muscle. All right. Can you guys tell I was passionate about this one? Because I got a little fired up, huh? I love this one. I think it's so important, you guys, that it is so important to learn how to validate yourself. And we're going to talk more about this in future episodes. And I'm going to keep referring back to warm-blooded. And it takes practice. It takes practice. But I'm going to give you guys a couple of takeaways that you can start practicing today, this week, to again start building that muscle of internal validation. Number 1, pause and notice when you're seeking external validation. It's okay. Just take note of it. Whether it's Instagram, your boss, wanting to be accepted or included, just take note. Oh my gosh, I'm seeking validation from them. Oh my gosh, I want them to validate me. It's okay. Just take inventory. Secondly, I want you to celebrate your wins. Anytime that you notice that you did something for you and only for you, and you didn't care who it shook up or why they were shook up by it, celebrate that. Yeah, fuck yeah. You did that and you should be proud. Celebrate that win. And of course, last but not least, your call to action for this week, which is to make one choice that validates yourself, that makes you proud, and that grows in that internal self-worth. Because you deserve it. Because there is nothing cooler than being unapologetically you. Truly, there is nothing cooler than that. All right, you guys, thanks for listening to this week's episode. If you know somebody who is struggling with external validation and is constantly seeking approval from other people, boys, teachers, parents, whatever, send this episode to them, share it with them, see if it could help them out a little. You are warm-blooded, you validate yourself, and you are worthy. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. We'll see you next week for another episode of Someone Should Know. See you then. Oh, I always say bye, y'all. Bye, y'all.